In 1995, scientists germinated a lotus seed that was 1,300 years old. It sprouted in 4 days. That shouldn't be possible. Seeds have shelf lives. Cells degrade. DNA breaks down over time. A seed buried since the 7th century should be dead, its biological machinery long since corroded into dust. But it wasn't. The oldest confirmed lotus seed to germinate was nearly 2,000 years old. Not frozen, not preserved in any special way, just buried in mud at the bottom of a dry lake bed in northeastern China, waiting. When researchers examined these ancient seeds, they found something unexpected. The plant had developed a genetic repair system so effective that centuries of damage could be reversed in days. Enzymes that slow cellular aging, compounds that protect against oxidative stress, a hard outer shell that acts like a time capsule. The lotus didn't transcend biology. It just evolved better defenses against it than almost anything else on Earth. A flower rises from mud that would kill most plants. Not beside it, not above it, through it. The lotus doesn't avoid darkness. It begins there. The seed falls into thick, lightless silt at the bottom of ponds and marshes. It waits, sometimes for days, sometimes for centuries. When germination begins, the hard outer shell cracks. Water seeps in. The embryo awakens. A tiny root pushes down into the sediment, while a stem reaches upward through several feet of water. The journey takes days. Then the first leaves appear. They float flat on the water's surface. But the lotus doesn't stop there. Stems rise higher, pushing leaves above the water entirely. These aerial leaves can reach 6 feet tall, held up by hollow stems that channel oxygen down to the roots. The flower comes last. It emerges on its own stalk, separate from the leaves, rising even higher. When it opens, it reveals something unexpected. The lotus flower produces heat. Not passively, like a rock warming in the sun. Actively. The central receptacle generates its own warmth through a specialized respiratory process. The flower maintains its temperature between 30 and 36 degrees Celsius, whether the air is 10 degrees or 45. This is called thermoregulation, and only a handful of plants can do it. The lotus adjusts its heat production continuously. When the air cools, the flower burns more energy. When the temperature rises, it throttles back. The reason appears to be pollination. Beetles, the lotus's pollinators, are cold-blooded. They need warmth to fly, to move. The lotus flower creates a heated chamber, a refuge. Beetles crawl inside seeking shelter and find a space warmer than the air outside, filled with nectar and pollen. They stay. They feed. They mate. And when they leave, they carry pollen to the next flower. The flower opens in the morning and closes at dusk, sinking back toward the water. This cycle repeats for 3 to 5 days. Then the petals fall. The central pod swells and hardens, developing seeds inside small chambers. Eventually, the pod tips forward, releasing seeds into the water below, where they settle into the mud. And the cycle begins again. Or doesn't. The seeds can wait. But perhaps the most extraordinary thing about the lotus isn't its heat production or its seed longevity. It's that the flower, despite rising from stagnant water and decomposing matter, never carries any of it upward. The leaves and petals are coated with microscopic structures. Under an electron microscope, the surface looks like a landscape of tiny mountains, each 10 to 20 micrometers tall. These peaks are covered with even smaller structures, nanoscale wax crystals that form a secondary layer of roughness. Water can't stick to this surface. When a droplet lands on a lotus leaf, it forms a nearly perfect sphere, touching the surface at only a fraction of a percent of its area. The droplet rolls off at the slightest tilt, and as it moves, it picks up any dust, dirt, or debris it encounters. This is called the Lotus effect. Scientists discovered it in the 1970s when they finally had microscopes powerful enough to see what was happening at the nanoscale. The self-cleaning property isn't chemical, it's structural. The combination of microscopic bumps and waxy coating creates a surface so hydrophobic that contamination simply cannot adhere. Engineers have been trying to replicate it ever since. Paints, fabrics, building materials, even spacecraft components have been designed using principles learned from lotus leaves. The flower that grows in filth has taught us how to stay clean. But across millennia, civilizations saw something more in the lotus than engineering. For thousands of years, people noticed the same thing about the lotus that scientists eventually measured. The flower closes at night and sinks beneath the water. At dawn, it rises and opens again, completely clean. Ancient Egyptians didn't have electron microscopes to see the nanostructures, but they saw the pattern. A plant that descended into darkness every night and emerged unstained every morning. They connected it to Ra, the sun god, and the cycle of death and rebirth. Blue lotus petals appear in tomb paintings and hieroglyphs. The flower was placed in burial chambers, a symbol of the journey from darkness into light, from death into whatever came after. In Hinduism, the lotus represents divine beauty and spiritual awakening. Vishnu is often depicted resting on a lotus, or with a lotus emerging from his navel, from which Brahma, the creator, is born. Lakshmi, the goddess of prosperity, sits on a fully opened pink lotus. The flower, growing untainted from impure waters, becomes a metaphor for the soul's journey through the material world toward enlightenment. Buddhism adopted similar symbolism. The Buddha is frequently shown seated on a lotus throne. According to tradition, wherever the infant Buddha took his first steps, lotus flowers bloomed from the ground. The flower's progression, from seed in the mud to stem through water to blossom in the air, mirrors the path of spiritual development, from ignorance through experience to awakening. Different colors carry different meanings. The white lotus symbolizes purity of mind and spirit. The pink lotus is considered supreme, representing the Buddha himself. The red lotus signifies love and compassion. The blue lotus, rare in nature, represents wisdom and the victory of spirit over knowledge. But beyond symbolism, beyond metaphor, the lotus offers something more tangible. Scientists studying its extraordinary seed longevity have found that the plant possesses a genetic system capable of repairing damage accumulated over centuries. The seeds contain enzymes that slow cellular aging and compounds that protect against oxidative stress. Understanding how this works may have implications for preserving other seeds, for protecting crops, perhaps even for human medicine. The lotus doesn't just symbolize resistance to decay, it demonstrates it, measurably, at the molecular level. A lotus seed can lie dormant for over a millennium, buried in lightless mud, and still germinate. A lotus flower can regulate its own temperature with precision that rivals any machine. A lotus leaf can repel contamination through structures so small they're measured in billionths of a meter. The plant doesn't transcend the mud, it uses it. The decay becomes nutrients. The water becomes structure. The darkness becomes the condition for light. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is rejected. The lotus doesn't rise despite the mud. It rises because of it. And when the flower opens, pristine and fragrant, floating above water that would drown other plants, growing from sediment that would poison their roots, it carries no trace of where it came from. Not because it has forgotten, but because it has transformed everything. The lotus blooms in the places nothing else can, and it does so without pretending those places don't exist.